When people talk about John Carpenter, they usually start with the images he have embedded into our pop culture. The white mask hiding in the shadows, a police station under siege, a city turned into a prison. These are the moments that have made director John Carpenter great, the moments that have remained in our memories and have haunted our dreams. But just as often, along with the visuals, they remember the sounds that accompany them, a simple piano line, a relentless bass pulse, a melody that seems to crawl under your skin and stay there. We all know and love the films that Carpenter has brought us. Dark Star, Halloween, Christine, Big Trouble in Little China, just to name a few. But today, we're exploring the musical career of John Carpenter, a director who didn't just score his films out of convenience, but helped redefine how electronic music could shape mood, tension, and fear in modern cinema. This is a film by, or more correctly, the music by, John Carpenter. I'm Wayne Whited, and I'll be your host on this musical journey to one of film's most innovative composers. And I'm joined today by my two great friends and fellow soundtrack fans, David Burns and Jeff Johnson.
Well, that was quite an introduction, I got to say.
that was awesome, Wayne.
Yeah.
And hey, today is the 16th. It is John Carpenter's birthday. What better day for us to talk about our favorite scores from this amazing director, this amazing composer.
Yeah. I mean, as we talk, this is going to be the year of John. We'll get into that a little bit later, but this is the year of John.
Yes.
Well, this is a special treat and a rather unusual turn of events for me. As many of you longtime listeners know, I've done two of these episodes exploring the works of great composers, first Jerry Goldsmith and then James Horner last summer. And I've been the one usually giving my choices for favorite scores. And of course, I've been popping in and out of many of the films and TV podcasts to give you my reviews of the great scores that accompany those films that a film by have talked about. But today, we're turning the tables and putting the spotlight on David and Jeff, two of the biggest horror movie fans I've ever known, and allowing them to present to you their top 5 favorite scores from the works of composer John Carpenter. So let's start at the beginning. When did you two first discover the works of John Carpenter?
Jeff, I don't know about you, but obviously my introduction to Carpenter was Halloween.
Yes.
That was the one that gave me my introduction to not only him as a director, but also as a composer. And then once I learned that, then I started digging more into his filmography.
I remember my older cousins telling me I had to be upstairs because I couldn't watch the movie they were watching. I snuck down the stairs just long enough to see the shape explode through a closet, terrorizing Laurie Strode. I was never the same after that. I was terrified for a couple of weeks, but I was a John Carpenter fan a couple years after that when I was old enough to handle it. But and then as far as the composer, John Carpenter, the composer, I'm pretty sure it was Escape from New York, where I was like, this music sounds it's similar to, did he compose Halloween? Oh, he did. And then I realized that this is the guy that writes his own music and directs his own films, and a lot of times writes his own movies, and loved him ever since.
Well, before we get into the top 5, let's take a look at the background and history of the musical side of John Carpenter. Carpenter's early years as a film composer grew directly out of his development as a low-budget independent filmmaker of the late 1960s and 1970s. He had stated that it was his father's work as a music teacher in Western Kentucky University that first brought an interest in music to him. And while studying film at USC, he absorbed the influence of composers like Bernard Herrmann, Ennio Morricone, Dmitri Tiomkin, and the emerging minimalist and electronic artists of the era. But financial limitations forced him to work with simple melodies and synthesizers. Rather than being a drawback, these constraints shaped his signature approach, emphasizing repetition, rhythm, and mood over orchestral complexity. His earliest work, the 1974 film Dark Star, showed how sparse and atmospheric music could enhance tone and compensate for limited resources. From the start, Carpenter viewed music as an essential element to the storytelling rather than just background accompaniment. His major breakthrough as a composer came with the 1978 film Assault on Precinct 13, where a pulsing, minimalist theme played on synthesizers drove the film's tension and established his recognizable sound. With some influence from Lalo Schifrin's urban crime scores, Carpenter used repetition and bass-heavy rhythms to create a sense of relentless threat. This approach continued in what I'm sure you'll agree the most iconic and best-known scores, the music for Halloween, where his simple piano motif in an unusual time signature became one of his most famous themes in cinema history. Carpenter often composed directly to the edited footage, allowing the music to dictate pacing and intensify its suspense. These scores proved that electronic minimalism could be both frightening and unforgettable. But by the turn of the 1980s, Carpenter refined his musical style through films such as the 1980s film Fog, and again the next year in Escape from New York, frequently collaborating with Alan Howarth to expand his technical range. Modern synthesizer technology allowed for richer textures while maintaining the stark simplicity that defined his early work. Now, what do you think about Alan Howarth and his work, Jeff?
The thing about Alan Howarth is, and I think a lot of our listeners probably might not be familiar with that name, but he's responsible for special sound effects and sound design in some of Hollywood's biggest films. I'm talking about movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark, Gremlins, Poltergeist, Beetlejuice, and guys, I'm sure you know, but this is the guy that was involved in the first 6 Star Trek films.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, his name was all over the 80s, 1980s films everywhere.
Well, as David likes to point out, it all comes back to Trek, right?
It does. It does indeed.
Yeah. But I kind of think it's kind of cool. Like, we're based in Cincinnati. We've got Carpenter beneath us. He's in Kentucky. We got Howarth in Cleveland, Ohio. He was born in Cleveland, Ohio. And a really fun fact about him, growing up there, he played in a local rock band that once opened for the Who.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, he's all over the place, isn't he?
He is.
Good deal.
Well, Carpenter helped legitimize electronic scoring in mainstream genre film, particularly horror and science fiction, when other composers attempted to duplicate in the years after. His early musical scores not only defined the sound of his own films, but also influenced a decade of filmmakers and composers who followed. How do the two of you feel about Carpenter's musical body of work? What do you think makes his music stand out above the others in the era?
I think for Carpenter, because he is the old school style of director who was a minimalist of everything. He had minimalist lighting, photography, those panoramic shots that he always give us. So he adapted that into his music as well. As you know, talking about scores and stuff like that over the years, Wayne, even on here in the Film By, we love those big 100-piece orchestras and hearing those choirs and, those big elaborate, London orchestra and stuff like that, like John Williams used or James Horner used or Jerry Goldsmith uses or John Debney, whatever. But sometimes it's the simple themes that did not have much to them that makes them just as powerful as a 100-piece orchestra.
Yeah.
And what I like about Carpenter is that is what he goes for. He wants those simple themes that matches the simplicity of his story and his characters, but yet are so much in depth of what's going on that it pulls you into the story. It pulls you into the creepiness, the shadows, for a better word, of that story, of that film. And it works. He doesn't need the big pieces, which I'm sure he probably would if he had the access to it back then, but maybe not. I'm kind of glad that he didn't have that and he wanted to keep it low budget because of that happening and putting the money on screen instead of the music because he was doing it himself. That made his stories more impactful. That's what I love about his body of work the most.
Dave, you're absolutely right. And I think, to touch on what you were saying, it's all about keeping it simple. That's what draws success sometimes. And Carpenter, one of the things I always loved about him, he has a very specific style. And I know, and Wayne kind of alluded to that a few minutes ago, but I know, like, it's like when you're watching a John Carpenter movie, he has like certain shots, it's a John Carpenter movie, right? We've talked about that on a film by. I think I hear a score from John Carpenter. I know it's John Carpenter's music.
Mm-hmm.
I immediately know it. And it's probably because it's that simple, that almost like haunting effect that a lot of his films, and then given that's going to go with the genre that he's responsible for working in. But even when you talk about a movie like Big Trouble in Little China, where he gets to expand a little bit, or The Fog, where he gets to expand a little bit on what he typically does, it's just awesome to hear. And he's one of the guys that I think does a great job of defining a character in a film with their theme.
Yep.
Yeah, touching on what you said, David, too, thinking back, if I look at Halloween, I look at Escape from New York, I can't see them with big budget, large orchestra scores. I really can't. I just think Carpenter, he composes the music to match the films perfectly. I think his music fits exactly what he has on screen. All right, before we get to our top list, let's take a short break for these messages.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to celebrate Deaf Dave's 1984, a brand new show that will take you through the greatest pop culture year we have ever seen.
Wax on.
My fellow Americans,
Wax off.
Transformers. I am a candidate and will seek re-election.
From movies, music, sports, comics, television, and more, this show will be a chronological journey through every aspect of the year. So who's going to drive you home and not let the glory days pass you by? Deaf Dave's 1984. It's a hard habit to break, but time after time I'll show you why 1984 was the best year ever. So who are you going to call? Coming in 2026, subscribe and follow now. I'll be back.
Welcome back, and I am with Jeff Johnson and David Burns, and we are talking about the man, the legend that is John Carpenter. So, guys, let's start diving into his work and find out what your top 5 scores are from the music of John Carpenter. But before we do, I do want to mention that this is the first time we've talked about a composer that we've actually had the chance to meet in person.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. I didn't even think about that as we were gearing up to talk about this. What a treat that was. I mean,
yes.
I never
how
thought
cool was he?
Yeah, I never thought we'd meet that guy. And the fact that we were able to do it and to how cool he was, Jeff, like you just said,
Gosh.
The guy was awesome.
Well, if you would have told me even a couple years ago that we would be standing with John Carpenter, chatting him up with the Plymouth Fury from Christine behind us, I would have said that's impossible. It's not going to happen. But
right.
It was a hell of a trip, and like I said, hell of a guy. He was a lot of fun to talk with.
All right, here we go. Our top 5 best musical scores from composer John Carpenter. Jeff, we're going to start with you. What's your pick for number 5?
Well, let's go back to 1981 so we could go forward to the futuristic 1997. It's Escape from New York for me. I feel like, and I know this is kind of silly to say right from the get-go, but I feel like this is one of his more iconic scores. It's aggressive. I know the theme of that repeating bass line that you mentioned earlier, Wayne. I know that's going to come up several times probably, but I mean, Escape from New York. I can hear it in my head right now. That slow building that it has. It's electronic, it's icy, it's futuristic, but it puts you in that mood where, yeah, this feels, I know I'm in the future, but it's also a broken future. It's dystopian. It's a little grimy, and I absolutely love it from start to finish. It's there's a little bit of repetition, but not a lot, because like when I think about the scene like where they're on the bridge, the 66th bridge, and that's an amazing track on the soundtrack, where it really revs up. It's really action packed. Overall, that relentless rhythm that it has. I think it's perfect for Snake Plissken. As I said, like, he does a good thing where he matches a theme to a character, and the music of Escape from New York, I feel, really tells you who S.D. Plissken, what he's all about, and what he's all about is an anti-hero, a classic anti-hero.
I'm really surprised that you put that at number 5.
This was there are no losers on this on a list.
There's not.
John Carpenter. Yeah, it's hard. I went back and forth, but I've been listening. Listen, I knew we might have a chance to talk about John Carpenter on his birthday. I wanted to prepare myself and listen to as many of his film scores as possible, because I knew, like, hey, I don't have the intelligence that Wayne has to really talk in detail about, I'm not the musical guy. I never played an instrument, so I was like, I might be a little bit over my head, but I'm at least going to listen to every single one of these soundtracks as much as possible and soak up as much as I can, as fast as I can.
Well, Escape from New York is on my list, but it's not number 5.
All right.
Well, David, why don't you tell us what your number 5 is?
Why don't I do that? Of course. My number 5 is a film that we have discussed on 1986 limited series at a film by. And of course, that is Big Trouble in Little China. So there are a couple tracks on here that I appreciate very, very much. One is called Here Come the Storms. The score fuses vibrant synthesizer textures with bold rock and roll elements, creating an electric, upbeat, and energetic sound. This blend gives the music a subtle Chinese-inspired atmosphere that runs throughout the film. The result is a mysterious, strange, and unusual sonic landscape, perfectly matching the film's offbeat and enigmatic tone. And if you've seen this film and you know the character of Jack Burton, you will know Offbeat fits that perfectly. And so does the story of Big Trouble in Little China, because it is very offbeat. There's another track on here called Hide, which was not released on the soundtrack until, I think, 2009, I believe it was, when they re-released the soundtrack. This one, throughout you hear an upbeat electric theme reminiscent of Beverly Hills Cop. Bright synths and quick, punchy rhythms that drive the momentum forward. The rapid beats signal action and fast-paced movement, perfectly underscoring the urgency and swagger of our hero and the rest of the gang. Honestly, guys, if you've not seen Big Trouble in Little China, you need to check it out. This is one of those movies that is very underrated, for one. It's got a cult following now, but it was not marketed correctly back then when this movie was released, and that's what hindered it. And it's quite a shame, because it is a fantastic film. Has a very dark anti-hero that John Carpenter loves to create, and of course using Kurt Russell, who's perfect in everything that he does. But the music in this throughout it just matches this oddball character, dark hero, and this odd story that we get that's set place in a very Asian environment. So that is definitely my number 5.
Well, David, I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of Big Trouble in Little China. It's the best movie of 1986. I've said that on occasion. It is on my list, and I'm quite surprised that is your number 5. But again, there's no wrong answer.
There's no wrong.
I don't even know if there's a wrong ranking. But I was just like, what? Number 5?
Well, we're meeting. See, Escape from New York, same thing. Number 5, Jeff? Yeah. Really?
This is going to get interesting, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Well, moving along, let's hear your number 4 choice, David.
Well, of course, I have to give this one a nod, and that's 1980's The Fog. So Carpenter actually considers this as one of his best scores. Almost agree with him, because number 1 that I've got is obviously number 1. I don't know why he wouldn't pick that one, but probably because it's so popular. So the theme in The Fog, the opening carries a distinctly Vincent Price-like flair, eerie, theatrical, and steeped in classic horror atmosphere, before shifting into an Exorcist-style rhythmic pulse. The theme is simple, as many of Carpenter's most effective scores are, yet it quietly prepares us for a chilling story set in a small coastal town. Its minimalist structure, punctuated by quick, nervous beats, subtly elevates your own heartbeat, placing you directly in the shoes of the townspeople who are about to face a supernatural revenge rising from beyond the grave. Now, to continue with the theme, there's one track called Main Theme Reprise. This score shifts into a more upbeat tone, driven by a bright piano motifs and subtle clicking textures. Even with its livelier rhythm, the theme continues to set the atmosphere for the film's setting. Again, a quiet coastal town carrying a deep, dark legend waiting to surface. The music hints at the story's buried secrets, giving the sense that something long hidden is finally ready to be told. The last piece that I have is Tommy Tells of Ghost Ships. The piano drifts into a gentle, nostalgic melody, evoking memories of old times and a long whispered legend that hangs in the air like the fog itself. Layered beneath it, the organ adds a classic haunted house tension, its tones unsettling enough to keep you perched on the edge of your seat. The combination creates a mood of creeping unease, making you feel as though something unknown is lurking just behind the next corner, hidden in the shadows. Now, listeners, if you've not seen the original Fog, please see the original. Do not watch the remake. It's nowhere near the classic that John Carpenter has given us. You need to watch The Fog just for Adrienne Barbeau, for her smooth, buttery voice that you hear as she is the DJ of the radio station. But there's so much goodness about this. Jamie Lee Curtis is in it. You've got Nancy Loomis, who's in a lot of Halloween people, not big roles, but they're in it. And yeah, it's definitely something that is very mystique, very on the edge of your seat, and just like the story, it rolls in just like the title of the film, The Fog.
All right, Jeff, give us your pick for number 4.
Well, my number 4, we're gonna go back to one of his earlier works. I'm talking pre-Halloween, and we covered this film on our limited 1976 series, Assault on Precinct 13. The thing I love about this one is, first off, it's really raw. It's, this is Carpenter before the iconic Halloween theme. So, I think he's taken some chances early on because he hasn't honed his craft just yet. And as much as I love it, it's hypnotic. It's got that repeating main theme. And I think sometimes it works against him because if you listen to the score from beginning to end, it kind of goes through the whole soundtrack. Each piece of music has that original, that da-na-na, da-na-na. It never really leaves us for long. But again, it's back to its simplicity. It's a little primal, and I feel like it does a great job of making you feel the tension and the claustrophobia that is inside this police station that's under siege with this small ragtag group of people, where you got a couple cops, you got a couple criminals, and then you got some innocent bystanders. Nancy Loomis among them, Dave, as you pointed out in The Fog. But I like this one because I think Carpenter does a great job with minimal resources, and throughout the entire film, that continuing theme continues to amplify because it's a little relentless. It just never lets you not feel like you're out of danger.
And it should come as no surprise that early in Carpenter's career, there was no release of that score on CD or on record back when the film came out for many, many years. It wasn't until 2003 that we saw a release, but only in Europe, on the record makers label, containing a very brief 24 minutes of music. It would see its U.S. premiere release in 2012 from BSX Records, produced for the label by Alan Holworth, containing 36 minutes of score and including Carpenter's score for the 1974 film Dark Star, which makes the CD a total of 1 hour and 1 minute of music. That soundtrack is still available for download through the BSX Records website.
Wayne, I was actually listening to the Assault on Precinct 13 album on Spotify, and I wasn't paying attention, to your point. It's Assault on Precinct 13 and Dark Star.
Yeah.
And I'm driving down the highway, and all of a sudden I hear some music that is absolutely not Assault on Precinct 13. I was like, what the hell is this? What's going on? And but that I mean, I was like, but I kept listening. I was like, well, this is super cool. I didn't know I was gonna get a little bonus treat here with Dark Star. So definitely a great one to have physical media.
All right, we are at number 3, and let's begin with Jeff.
Well, I don't know what I can say that David didn't about 1980's The Fog. It's my number 3 pick. It is, I think it's probably his most atmospheric, and I think he captures, obviously The Fog. If you haven't seen it, I hope most people have, but it's a ghost story, and I really feel like Dave. I love that you said it kind of gave you a Vincent Price vibe.
Mm-hmm.
It does. The music, it's mournful. It's a little foreboding, and you can feel that there's tragedy in it, and it kind of drifts into the scenes. It kind of drifts out. There's that constant tension, kind of like with Assault on Precinct 13. But what The Fog does, it just keeps you. It never lets you forget that you're in a haunted movie. You're in a scary ghost movie, because it's always there in the background. That threat is always there, and it's inescapable. It's awesome. I should probably have a little bit higher, truth be told, but I've only got 2 picks above this, so I gotta be careful.
Exactly, and the music just creeps along like The Fog itself. It's weird to say it, but it's true. It's almost like, and Wayne, you mentioned it. So it's like when he edited the film, and then he put did the music after he already edited everything, which they all do. But I mean, he purposely, it seems like, he matched the music to the movement of the fog. It's crazy to say, but it looks like and feels like that.
I think one of the things that makes The Fog so good is, I mean, I get it. It's 1980, so he hasn't really established his sound yet. But looking back, we can, when I think Carpenter, or we think Carpenter, I'm sure we're all thinking like it's all about the synth stuff, right?
Yep.
That's it. That's his wheelhouse. But The Fog doesn't have a whole lot of that. There's more piano, and it's I don't know. It's spooky, I guess.
And if you've never been out to that area, that fog really does look like that. Like it will roll over the hills looking just like it does in that movie. It is frightening.
Yeah. And one thing about the music of The Fog, if you've watched the film, Dave, you mentioned Adrienne Barbeau, and the sultry, lovely Adrienne Barbeau. I had the opportunity to speak with her a couple years ago. We actually interviewed her for one of our Conman episodes. And the weird thing, she's the DJ in this lighthouse, but she's just playing like bandstand music, which I always thought was weird. Come to find out, Carpenter they didn't have the money to buy, to sample actual rock music. So when we talked, I know I asked her about Stevie Wayne. I said, if you had the budget, if you could have got the music, who is Stevie Wayne listening to? Who's she playing? And she had some great answers. Listeners, you got to go back and listen to the Conman episode. I think it was like Conman 2 Electric Boogaloo.
It was.
Where we had the Adrienne
Yep.
Barbeau interview. Go back, check that out, because she was just a delight. She gave us a little bit of a soundbite there to talk about Stevie Wayne. So check that out.
I'll admit I'm no John Carpenter expert when it comes to his music. That's why I'm hosting this. But I listen to much of the music to familiarize myself with his scores, and The Fog is definitely my favorite of his. Very Sarabon released his score back in 1984 on LP, and then the next year on CD, but containing just a tiny fraction of music, barely over a half hour of it. Silver Screen Records in Great Britain did a little better in 2000, releasing an expanded score with nearly an hour of the music. However, Silver Screen would finally put things right in 2012 and release a 2-disc complete score for the film containing an hour and 45 minutes of music and a nice 6-minute interview with Jamie Lee Curtis. I like this score so much that I found one of the complete CDs on eBay and ordered it this week. That's how much I liked it.
It's a good one.
Okay.
That's a very good one. Yeah.
Wayne, I was actually going to ask you at the end of this, I was going to ask you what your favorite John Carpenter score was.
Now you know.
And there it is.
Now we know. All right, there it is.
All right, David, why don't you give us your number 3 choice?
Well, here on the Film By, we all know how much we love Stephen King. So clearly I'm going to go with 1983's Christine. So the one track Moochie's Death and Christine Attacks The score kicks into an upbeat rhythm that mirrors the action unfolding on screen. A long, drawn-out sting builds beneath it, the beat accelerating faster and faster as the tension rises. Then, just as Christine closes in on her kill, the tempo drops into a slower but steady pulse, cold, deliberate, and relentless. The music becomes the car's heartbeat, signaling that nothing is going to stop it. The other track that I would like to point out is Show Me. The theme is simple, much like Halloween, yet every bit as haunting. Its sparse, steady rhythm unsettles the listener, mirroring the character's own slow discovery of what they're truly dealing with. The music places us right in the driver's seat of the car we've come to love and obsess over, letting its presence loom over every moment with quiet, relentless menace. Christine is one of those movies that, if you've not seen it, you really should. Because and a lot of Carpenter stuff is like that, to be honest with you. A lot of the stuff has a major cult followings, but this is back in the day when, Stephen King movies were, the books were obviously very popular and things were starting to get turned into movies. And John Carpenter picked this one up and decided, to go ahead and produce it and direct it and do the music itself. But it's about a car that comes to life. Guys, I've talked about the movie The Car from the late 70s, which is a great film in itself. But this is another one of those movies that, the car comes to life and, kind of, I guess, romances the guy who gets the car. They both kind of fall in love with it, if you think about it, and they become obsessed with one another. And the soundtrack itself just follows suit with that. You get that the car gets jealous and gets revengeful and goes after people. But the music matches that beautifully and perfectly, as Carpenter does with all of this stuff.
You're right about The Car. That is James Brolin. That is such a great pick. What I think that 1977, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Now you talking about Christine like that, I kind of want to go do a little marathon. I want to watch The Car. I want to watch Christine, and I'm definitely going to watch The Wraith. 1986 is The Wraith. Which, we did an episode on that too. So. Yeah. Maybe we can talk about the car at some point, David.
We need to. Absolutely.
That's a great film. I saw that a couple of years ago. Loved it.
Yep.
At the time of the film's release, there was an LP release from Motown Records, but this contained only 2 minutes of Carpenter and Howarth's score on it. Most of it was filled with songs heard from the film. The only ever release of this score was back in 1989 by Very Sarah Band on CD with 18 tracks and only 33 minutes of music. Varys did re-release this on LP with the same music back in 2017, but this is very hard to find and very expensive on the secondary market. All right, I think it's time for another short break. We'll be right back after these messages.
Ever notice how some of the most legendary movies, TV shows, and songs were never supposed to work?
Box office flops on paper, network rejects, songs the artist didn't even want to record.
And yet, boom, instant classic, cultural obsession, songs that have played everywhere nonstop for decades.
We dig into the projects that were supposed to flop and accidentally became icons.
Bad ideas, bad timing, somehow perfect results.
This is The Accidental Legends, proving that failure is just a success that showed up late.
We're available anywhere that you find podcasts, Spreaker, Apple, or Spotify.
We're back again. And if you're just joining us, then what are you doing? Go back and listen to the rest of it. But for the rest of you, we're here talking about the top 5 musical film scores of composer John Carpenter. We've heard number 5, 4, and 3. And now working our way down the countdown will be David Burns, who is going to give us his number 2.
Well, I got on Jeff about his number 5 because Escape from New York is clearly should be a little bit higher in my opinion, which he's going to get me with one. So, 1981's Escape from New York. Jeff talked about it, a lot, and he nailed it on the head for sure. The score opens with a simple electric theme that amplifies the rugged heroism of our anti-hero Snake. Its steady pulse immediately sets the tone for the mission ahead and firmly grounds us in the film's gritty, futuristic world. And Alan Howarth crafted the sonic palette using ARP and Prophet 5 synthesizers, a Linn LM1 drum machine, acoustic piano, and Fender guitars, building the textured foundation of the soundtrack. Carpenter layered his signature touch on top, composing the melodies on synthesizer keyboards to create a theme that's minimalist, moody, and unmistakably iconic. The Escape from New York is just one of those movies that's just like, because when I got introduced to John Carpenter, it was obviously Halloween. So as I was watching more and more Carpenter and diving into his filmography and stuff like that, I didn't know what Escape from New York was at the time. So I'd already seen The Fog. And when I dove into Escape from New York, I was expecting something more horror than I got from Escape from New York because I didn't watch a trailer or anything like that. I just dove right into it. And I was like, whoa, this is completely different because I hadn't seen Assault on Precinct 13 at all to that point. So this was my introduction to John Carpenter of, this style of film. And the music, as Carpenter does, just matched it perfect.
Well, there was a short release of the score back in 1983 on LP by Very Saraband with about 35 minutes of music, and then a re-release of it on CD in 1989. In the year 2000, Silver Screen Records in England released a remastered and remixed CD of the score, expanding the music to close to an hour, but including tidbits of dialogue along with the music. There is a complete score release out there on vinyl by Waxworks Records, released back in 2020, but it is sold out already on their website. Mondo Records also released the complete score on a 2 LP San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, limited to 500 copies. They're both sold out, but can be found on the secondary market quite easily if you're looking to buy one.
Wayne, you mentioned that this soundtrack, it has a couple of those sound clips, those little interludes.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. Like listening to this one, I picked up on that immediately. I wish we had not strewn away from that. You don't hear that in today's soundtrack albums. I think.
Yeah, and I don't mind them. It's not on top of the music. It's actually separate tracks. So it's not like
it's separate tracks.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if they could go back to that.
There's a lot of things they need to go back to that they've gotten away from that they should.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That is true. That's true.
Now we'll hear from Jeff Johnson and his number 2 pick.
Wayne, it's all in the reflexes. Dave, you knew this was coming.
I knew it was coming.
I was so surprised when you launched with number 5, Big Trouble in Little China. It's my number 2, and I know that it's not his most memorable or his absolute best, but it is my absolute favorite. I love this score for all the reasons that you mentioned, Dave, because it's playful and it's genre bending. We talked about this when we covered Big Trouble in Little China in our 86 series. But, when you've got Carpenter's synth style and then you've got the rock element, there's so much fun to be had because this movie is larger than life. And, you kind of like they didn't really know what to make of it, I was watching an interview with Carpenter. It's actually Robert Rodriguez was interviewing John Carpenter, and they're talking about Big Trouble in Little China. Now, Carpenter talked about how much fun he had on this set, how amazing the cast was to work with, the crew was to work with. But he also mentioned, the studio thought they were getting an Indiana Jones movie, and they got a guy who is sort of like a third-rate John Wayne who thinks he's the hero, but it's actually the sidekick. So I think it's sad that it missed the mark back in '86 because it should have been a much bigger film at the box office. But not to step on what Dave has already said, but when you've got a movie where it's mixing martial arts and fantasy and comedy and action adventure and a little bit of a ghost story with Lo Pan, Carpenter is just he's in the kitchen and he is cooking on this one because he's got all kinds of stuff happening. There's dark moments, there's light moments. Dave, you mentioned the Storms. Mm-hmm. That track, one that I absolutely love. Aside, we all love the Pork Chop Express. You have to love the Pork Chop Express. That's one of the greatest opening themes of any movie. I don't care who you are. But the Alley, there's a track. That's a good called one. The Alley, mm-hmm. Where the rival gangs are about to meet, and that music, it's quiet and it kind of builds the tension. With those drum beats that doom 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 doom. I love it. And then when Ah Leong screams, the music matches the intensity of these two armies just running at each other with weapons colliding and shouting, and it is just a roller coaster of a piece of music, and I love it. I mean, I'm getting pumped up just thinking about it right now. But absolutely fantastic score, and it's my number 2 only because there's one other one out there.
Oh yeah, we know what's coming.
We know what's coming. Yeah.
But Jeff, that the alley leads me into one of my favorite lines of all the Big Trouble in China. It's so simple, but yet so funny. Don't look! Too late, I did!
I already did!
I already did!
All right, I won't. Yeah. Oh man, I could quote Jack Burton all night. He's one of my. I think he's. I mean, when you think about Kurt Russell and John Carpenter and their collaboration over the years, and all the great characters they've given us, I'd love to have that conversation at some point, like a McCready versus Pliskin versus Burton conversation, and
that'd be fun.
And like who's your favorite and why? That'd be a fun one, but not today.
Well, back in 1986, when the film was released, there was a short CD release of the score brought out by Enigma Records containing 9 tracks of score with 45 minutes of music. But this score has developed a cult following, just like the film, and was released complete and remastered first in 2008 and again in 2016 by La La Land Records on a 2-CD limited edition containing all 1 hour and 36 minutes of score along with bonus tracks. Now, before we move on, I thought we'd take a sidestep here and talk a little bit about John Carpenter's other musical work. Over the last decade or so, John Carpenter has begun to move into a new phase of his career as a musical composer. Carpenter's non-film musical output, released primarily on CD in the 2010s, reveals an artist freed from the narrative demands of cinema, while still deeply rooted in the sonic identity he helped create. To date, there have been 3 albums produced: Lost Themes 2, and The Anthology, and each reinterpret or reimagine music untethered from film, allowing Carpenter to explore mood and structure for their own sake. Working closely with his son Cody Carpenter and godson Daniel Davies, these releases modernize his classic analog synth sound without abandoning his minimalist style. The result is a musical tapestry that feels familiar yet new. His first album, Lost Themes, in particular, stands as a creative statement rather than a novelty. It was released in 2015. Each track plays like the opening of an unseen film, unfolding slowly through pulsing bass lines, restrained melodies, and repetition. Carpenter leans heavily on atmosphere and tension, and unlike his film scores, which must follow the visuals on screen, this music breathes more freely, allowing the music to stretch and evolve. The album reveals one thing about the composer. Carpenter knows exactly how little he needs to do to keep the listener engaged. His second album, Lost Themes 2, released a year later, sharpens this approach with a slightly more aggressive and rhythmic edge to it, which tracks that feel darker, heavier, and a little more overtly influenced by modern electronic and industrial music. It's still definitely Carpenter. The melodies remain simple, the structure's disciplined, and the mood unmistakably his. But Cody Carpenter's influence is especially noticeable in this album. It makes it feel less like an experiment, more like a fully realized orchestral event. His third album, Anthology, released in 2017, contains much of his familiar film music, but because of the concert-oriented approach to the themes, it makes it feel more like a live performance than a soundtrack. These versions strip the music from their films and presents them in a standalone electronic composition, emphasizing rhythm and texture of the music itself. Hearing familiar themes reimagined in this way highlights just how strong Carpenter's musical ideas are. Now, 2 further albums have been released by the composer in recent years, one titled Life After Death and the second Noir. Each of these albums were released by the indie label Sacred Bones Records and are available to purchase through either their website or through the composer's own website at theofficialjohncarpenter.com, where you can find samples of his work from many of his albums I just mentioned. It's a great listen, and I suggest everyone to check it out.
Anthology, Wayne, is fantastic.
Have you listened to it?
Yes.
Good. Yeah.
Oh, great.
And it is. It because I was like, wait, that's a little bigger. That's a little bolder.
Mm-hmm.
Certain themes, it definitely has a concert feel. Like he's at the Hollywood Bowl, and it's. Mm-hmm. If you're a Carpenter fan, you haven't listened to it, I can't recommend it enough.
I loved what you said when you said he's not constrained to cinema. because he can just go hog wild and go crazy, which is what he does with these. And they are all fantastic. Great work by Carpenter. And I'm glad he's moved into that part of his life that he's able to do that and get to explore that with his son. That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, before we move on to our number one pick, we're going to talk about a couple of the scores that didn't make the top 5 lists, but came very close. These are our honorable mentions. Jeff, what have you got for us for your pick for honorable mention?
Show me. Let's go back to Christine one more time. It was tough to keep this out of my top 5. But again, I wrestled with this, and as I said at the top of the hour, I don't think there's no wrong answers here when you're talking about any of these composers. You know, the 2 episodes that you guys did for Goldsmith and Horner. There's just no wrong answer. There's no wrong ranking as far as I'm concerned, because we're talking about some of the greatest music that we've heard in cinema history. But Christine would be my honorable mention. I like that it's restrained. We're still early in his filmography, so I think he's still learning how and where to put the music. And let's go back to the theme of being simple. You know, the synthesizers are good, but they're also a little methodical. And I love that every now and then we get those horror, like, I guess what would you call it, like a horror sting? You know, like the music where.
Yep.
You know, and Carpenter kind of had that, you know, in some of his stuff. But I think the overall, I think the score kind of gives you tells this story about obsession. You know, Dave talked about the car being a little jealous, the Plymouth Fury being jealous of Artie, and it's there in the music. But it's like this persistent, patient evil. You know, if that makes sense.
It does.
And it's a fun one, because, you know, we get, you know, like Dave, you talked about the Motown stuff, and, you know, hearing Bad to the Bone by George Thorogood and the Destroyers. It's a cool one. And it was hard to keep off my list, but it is my honorable mention.
David, let's hear yours.
So this one didn't make my top 5, but it was close. And of course, Jeff, you already mentioned this one, and this is 1976 Assault on Precinct 13. The theme opens with a straightforward, almost underrated melody that immediately evokes the feel of police work, detectives on the beat, steady, alert, and committed. Its simplicity works in its favor, conjuring images of officers doing their best to protect the innocent and hold the line. The music mirrors the film's tone, grounding us in a world where duty, grit, and quiet demonstration shapes every moment. You know, Jeff, you mentioned that, and this is in his early days when he's first exploring doing his own music, really, for his movies at this caliber. And you can hear that in the music. You know, it's not as powerful and as strong as the other movies that come a little bit later, and one we're going to be talking about very shortly.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is him learning, him getting to understand not only directing films, but, you know, composing the music for that film, finding that beat, finding that tone that matches with what's going on screen. He did it good. He did it really good in Assault Precinct 13, but he only gets better as he goes, as we can tell in our top 5.
I also want to give an honorable mention shout out to The Thing. We pretty much had to disqualify this score from the top 5 because it's a shared credit. Carpenter scored parts of it alongside the legendary composer Ennio Morricone. First of all, let me state that I am a huge Ennio Morricone fan. I think his scores for Richard III and The Untouchables are brilliant. Plus, a little known fact, when ITV was trying to launch Space 1999, they had Morricone rescore the opening episodes and to replace the scores that were originally done. And it just came out on CD, and I absolutely love it. But The Thing is a great score. Both Morricone's and Carpenter's music fits it so perfectly. It's been released so many times on CD and LP and cassette. But recently in 2011, BSX Records did a re-recording of the complete score, over an hour of music, and it all contains the Carpenter music. It's still available on their website. It's worth seeking out. You'll really enjoy the score, but it could not make our top 5.
Wayne, I am so happy you mentioned The Thing for an honorable mention, because I know we probably had a lot of listeners going, "What the hell's wrong with these guys? How come they're not talking about The Thing?" But, you know, you can't. Technically, it's not a Carpenter score. It's Morricone's.
Yep.
But when you think about collaboration, because Carpenter does such a great job, obviously, you know, look at you, Alan Howarth. But think about this: when they're doing The Thing, And this was a studio decision. Universal told Carpenter, you can direct it, but you're not doing the music. But he had already written a bunch of stuff. So he's communicating with Morricone about the score. Carpenter does not speak Italian, and Ennio does not speak English. So, the translator, basically Carpenter's, well, all he could offer him was like fewer notes. That's what and you get this amazing score. And Morricone, knowing Carpenter's work, tried to mimic it a little bit. I think that's why everyone hears the Thing film score and just assumes it's a John Carpenter score. I did for the longest time before I paid attention. Yeah.
It sounds just like a John Carpenter score. I mean, it's dead on.
Yes.
And you would think Carpenter has composed that, but that's not true.
Not the case.
Not the case. Not the case at all. Now, if we were choosing movies and not just the score, yes, the Thing is going to be towards the top. I'm going to tell you that right now.
I think. Listen, I don't want to start a war, but I think it's his best.
I would agree with you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Honestly, as much as I like the talking about the one that now we're about ready to talk about.
Yeah, the one. Yeah.
The Thing is his best work without question.
Yeah.
Well, give me a drum roll, because now it's time to reveal our number one pick for favorite John Carpenter musical score. Jeff, let's hear yours.
Memoirs of an Invisible. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
John Carpenter's Vampires. I knew it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it's any secret here. It's Halloween. Has to be Halloween.
Agreed. It has to.
Yeah.
There's no argument. No argument.
Yeah, there's no argument. Dave, I'll let you lead off hit here.
I mean, Halloween is to horror movies as the music composed by John Carpenter for Halloween is the same to horror as John Williams' music for Jaws. It stands out that much. Everybody on this goddamn earth has heard the Halloween theme, and they immediately know what movie that goes to. Just like Jaws. You know it.
Yep.
So it has to be his number one. But the thing for me is, there's a couple pieces of this score that I absolutely love. Actually, there's a bunch of them, and I would be here all day talking about this score if I could. But the main title here is every bit, and as I said, as iconic as John Williams' theme for Jaws, it's deceptively simple yet undeniably powerful. Nearly everyone recognizes the Halloween motif, and it stands arguably as the greatest horror score ever composed. And I hope you guys would agree with me on that one.
Yes,
I do.
Its stalking, repetitive patterns instantly evoke the sensation of being hunted by a killer who moves slowly, methodically, and without mercy. The music conjures the image of a quiet suburban town, the kind found anywhere in America, preparing for a night of trick-or-treating, except this time, a silent predator is lurking in the shadows. Throughout the score, sharp shrieks and sudden tense stings erupt without warning, mirroring Michael's own unpredictable appearances. It's a masterclass in musical suspense, turning simplicity into pure dread. Also, Laurie's theme uses simple, steady beats reminiscent of the main Halloween motif, but with a gentler, more hopeful tone. It reflects Laurie herself, the teenager just trying to navigate everyday life, unaware of the darkness creeping toward her. Beneath the melody's softness, there's an undercurrent of dread, quietly lurking, hinting that this fragile sense of normalcy won't last. Sooner or later, that hidden terror is going to surface. That is everything about this score. John Carpenter's score is goddamn brilliant.
I almost thought you were looking at my notes when you were talking about Jaws there for a second, because you're absolutely right. I've talked to people that have never seen Jaws, but they hear the music and they know that means danger, it means shark, right? And I think that's definitely got to be the same can be said for Halloween, because even if you haven't seen Halloween, and Dave, we've talked to people that have not seen this movie,
yep,
and we're hopefully going to try and change that. But you hear that music, you immediately know it's Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
The film, the score has basically, like the holiday itself, not just the movie, the holiday itself has basically adopted that piece of music.
It has.
Right? You hear it, and it's one of those things, like as soon as we get to like mid-September and the haunted houses start opening up and the scary movies start, and you'll hear it on the radio, you'll hear it on TV, you know it and you don't want to turn it off because you love it.
Yeah.
It is when I think of Halloween, I think the music. I think unstoppable dread. That's the phrase that comes to mind. He stripped this down to the bare essentials. It's cold, it's terrifying, and I'm with you, Dave. It is the greatest horror theme of all time, bar none.
As soon as you put that in and you start to hear that music, I'm telling you, chills just go up your spine because you recognize it so quickly and you know what it's bringing, what's coming. It's just, I mean, it defines a generation. It defines a genre is what it does.
The fact that the main theme is terrifying in itself, but when it's slowed down, like think about like a track like The Devil's Eyes, where Loomis is giving the origin story to Sheriff Brackett. That slower version of it is also equally terrifying because now it's like, well, now I feel like I'm moving slow and he's gonna get me. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Love this one.
Well, surprisingly, there was no release of this score back in the States when the film came out. But in 1983, Very Sarabande released it on LP and released a CD version in 1985. Very Sarabande then again released it for its 20th anniversary, this time with the complete score of over 50 minutes of music. Both of these releases have the score remixed and presented in stereo. A deluxe vinyl release from Mondo Records came out in 2018 for the 40th anniversary, but this time it was taken from the film stems and presented in mono as the music was originally heard back in 1978. I have to admit, I think it's time for another release of this score on CD, newly remastered with today's techniques. Incredible picks from all of the top 5. I agree with every one of your choices. They're all fantastic scores, all worthy of a re-listen and deserving to be in anyone's top 5 soundtracks. I hope that you, our listeners, go out and discover his musical works and discover a new and different side of his talent. John Carpenter didn't just change how horror looked. He changed how it sounded. With a keyboard, a beat, and an instinct for tension, he created a musical language that still echoes throughout film, television, and electronic music today. And as long as that pulse keeps playing, Carpenter's influence will never truly fade into silence. What did you think of John Carpenter's music? Did we mention all of your favorites, or did we forget any that you believe should have been on our top 5? We'd like to hear just what you thought about our choices. You can email us at afilmbypodcast@gmail.com. Find us online at afilmbypodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X. And if you're looking for more content or swag, you can join our Patreon and find out what incredible surprises are hidden within. I want to give a huge thank you to my fellow film music fans, David Burns and Jeff Johnson. You can hear David and I, along with our fellow Trekkie Scott Hoffman, on the regular Phaser Set to Stun podcast right here on a Film Bites channel. It's the 60th anniversary of Star Trek in 2026, and we have a lot of incredible surprises coming up for you throughout the year. And Jeff, what have you got in store for our listeners these coming months?
Well, as you guys know, we have kind of flipped the script here for 1 year only. We're not talking about the underrated films of our favorite directors. We're celebrating the bigger films of our favorite directors, specifically the films of 2001 and 2006. We are just kicking this off. We have had a lot of fun already. I believe this Monday, Amber Lewis, the voice of reason herself, will be back in the studio. We're going to be talking about Ron Howard's The Da Vinci Code.
Ooh, good one.
Yeah, great.
I love anything Ron Howard, so we're good.
Yeah. Well, Wayne, I if I could real quick, I just want to thank you. I know we've got some fun stuff. I'm hoping you're gonna tease this up for our listeners with some of the other composer
Year of John
that we're gonna do.
Year of John.
Yeah, the Year of John. If you'll elaborate on the Year of John, but
You're right.
I remember when we were talking about when we said Carpenter, and you're like, I don't know him. I'm not familiar with him all the way. And I was like, well, we're still doing him. And then you're like, I'll host then. You can be the guy. I was like, oh, okay. So thank you for giving me the chance to sit on the opposite side of the table, and share some of my favorites. It was a lot of fun, but I'm looking forward switching seats with you because I know you guys have got some awesome composers to talk about this year. We, and they just happen to all be named John.
They do.
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, check out our past top 5 film score podcasts, the top 5 Jerry Goldsmith scores and the top 5 James Horner scores. Both can be found on our website. And as Jeff said, next month we will be celebrating one of Hollywood's greatest composers, our second John of the year, on his 94th birthday with the top 5 favorite film scores of John Williams.
Woohoo!
And I promise you, they won't all be Star Wars movies.
How are you guys? Wait, how are you guys going to limit it to just 5?
It's not going to be easy, Jeff. It's not going to be easy.
You two are the biggest
hard.
John Williams fans I know in my life. And I feel like you're 15 honorable mentions. Let's go.
Well, Jeff, we can't have a 6-hour podcast. Okay?
No, we can't.
It's difficult, but we can do it, and you'll be surprised with some of our choices. To all of you listening and following us, we couldn't do this without your support. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Happy birthday, John.